I think maybe we can pick this up in the ensuing discussion. So thank you very much indeed, Ruth. We'll move on to John. As I mentioned, John's now the Director of England Barr after a long period of 16 years as Head of Communications at Radio New Zealand. He's a senior communications professional with many years of experience in a variety of executive roles, particularly in the area of strategic marketing, promotions, sponsorship management, media management, brand and reputation management. He was previously Marketing Director for the New Zealand Publishing Company and National Marketing and Promotions Manager for New Zealand retail booksellers. So please give John a very, very warm welcome. John Barr.
Barr.
B-A-R-R.
Kia ora tātou, ngā mihi mahana. Tēnā koutou e ngā kaihoi o te waka, he waka eke noa. I'm going to keep this quite short because I think the value that we have here is in the discussion. And I note that a major part of this discussion will be around public TV, so RNZ may have an interesting take on that. I use the words he waka eke noa. We are all in this together. And I think that's an interesting reflection on what we have seen over the last 48 hours. It's also an interesting reflection on the nature of the international media environment and New Zealand's media environment. We are in a rapidly changing and evolving environment, and it's an environment where we all need to be flexible and we all need to be in it together. So I would say that at the outset. Highly competitive in New Zealand, very, very rapid change in the commercial sector, the arrival of mega media organisations which are, even over the last 48 hours, and Bernard and I were talking about this just now, having a major influence on the way New Zealand is perceived and the way we receive information. If we look at RNZ, the major focus over the last five years or so has been a significant transformation from a traditional radio broadcaster into a multimedia, multi-channel media organisation. And there have been several components to that, but the major thrust has been to provide content wherever, whenever and however people want to receive it. That said, it's imperative that in a functioning democracy, government provides sustained support for public media, particularly for RNZ in the role in the democratic process. I think informed democracy is critical. There is a need for brave, independent and challenging journalism. And he waka eke noa, we're all in this together. Globalised, homogenised world that we live in, we are, and Ruth made this point, we are exposed to fake news and an increasingly toxic social media. And in that situation, the phrase that we use at RNZ, trust is the killer app. And that's where we are focusing our attention. We were really pleased last year that Colmar Brunton found RNZ was the most trusted New Zealand media organisation. That's something to be really proud of, but it's not something that you can be complacent about. You can't take that sort of situation for granted. I was at a seminar recently and someone said, trust arrives on foot and it departs on horseback. So our relationship with the New Zealand public is critical. I'll just really quickly just go through one or two of the strategic objectives RNZ is looking at the moment and a couple of the major initiatives. And those initiatives, both Bernard and Ruth as New Zealand On Air are closely involved in them, and we are in it together. Major focus for RNZ over the last 12 to 18 months has been the development of significant content sharing partnerships. RNZ is funded publicly, it produces high quality content, and our RNZ's view is that once that's been paid for by public money, it should be shared as widely as possible. RNZ does not have a commercial imperative. So we should be picking that information, creating it, high quality journalism, and it should be shared as widely as possible. RNZ now has more than 30 content sharing partners. Those are major media organisations like NZME, TVNZ, Newsroom, and including diverse groups such as Indian Newslink, Pacific Media News, and a variety of other organisations. Iwi stations are included. So that idea of being a partner with our colleagues in the media environment is essential to the direction that RNZ's taking. It's a partnership that ranges from, and maybe Bernard would like to expand on this in a moment, someone like Newsroom, but also in a much smaller environment, a digital online service called Crux in Queenstown. They carry and partner with RNZ, and they quite openly brand their material as coming from RNZ in the same way that, that Newsroom does. So that's maybe something we can talk about, Bernard. New Zealand On Air and RNZ have a significant innovation fund, an innovative fund that looks at creating new material for, it's fair to say, we say voices that are not often heard. It has several levels and has kicked off in the last 12 months and is already starting to produce some really innovative, exciting content that is reaching into audiences that wouldn't normally be covered by mainstream media. $6 million in that collaborative fund. Content is produced by independent content creators, so that's a partnership with the creators that are working independently outside of RNZ. The only control on that is that the content is first carried on RNZ platforms and then distributed as widely as we like. They are voices that need to be heard, and they bring cultural diversity into our lives. And again, Bernard, we might talk about that. Diversity is another major thrust of the RNZ business case. We have to be giving our culture a voice, probably more important than ever given the situation over the last 48 hours. We partner with Iwi Radio and with Te Whakaruruhau, and there is for the first time 2 years ago, a formal statutory Māori strategy that was introduced into RNZ. After many years of RNZ informally introducing Māori content, Te Reo On Air, this is now part of the SPE for RNZ, the required performance expectations, and it includes things like training for staff, but the introduction of diverse voices on air. And that's having some success. The other key thrust is the development of both digital and visual journalism. If we go back 12 months, there was one visual journalist employed by RNZ. There are now 6. And you see that reflected in the way the material is delivered through programs like Checkpoint, and increasingly through some of the new programs that are coming on stream. There's a new program, new radio and program being launched in April, which is a 5 a.m. show. That will ultimately have a lot of video content incorporated into it. The other significant point about that is, for the first time, we have a program presented by a Tongan New Zealander. Indira Stewart will be fronting that program. Another significant step forward. They are small steps in terms of the diversity for RNZ, but they are important ones. Look, in terms of public TV, I'm sure the questions will come up. RNZ is unashamedly platform agnostic. We are delivering material cross-platform, cross-channel, and that's the way it will continue to be. Ultimately, multi-platform, multimedia, a place where New Zealand voices are heard and we can tell our stories. And look, Peter, I think I'll stop there and we'll throw it open to questioning, I think.
Can I borrow your pen?
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, John.
I've got one which maybe is a later. That's your scope towards broken
It's a really good question. It is one of the thrusts for. There's a magnificent document which is a one-page sheet that we look at, which establishes the principles for what RNZ is doing, and it is essentially to develop a lifelong relationship with the people of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And part of that is reflecting provincial regions, and we would include provincial areas as voices that are not currently heard. So there is a thrust there. Ultimately, it comes down to funding and budget. And I know Bernard's got some thoughts on that he'll hopefully share with us.
I've just got one quick question to throw at you, John. What's the status of the RNZ Plus proposal? Which was,
I do see, Peter, that on the invitation is an RNZ Plus logo. Mm-hmm. It doesn't exist with RNZ, but the current position would be we are platform agnostic. Mm-hmm. We are moving ahead in the absence of any clarity.
Right.
Can I have a look?
Thank you very much indeed.